You're listening to Protect It All, where Aaron Crow expands the conversation beyond just OT, delving into the interconnected worlds of IT and OT cybersecurity. Get ready for essential strategies and insights. Here's your host, Aaron Crow.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is the Protect It All podcast. I'm really excited about this episode. I think you may be, as far as distance away from me, the furthest away guest that I've ever had on my podcast. So thank you very much. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where that you're sitting today, and a little bit about your background in OT and cybersecurity.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. My name is Sulaiman Alhasawi. I'm from Kuwait. I've started my journey in OT security in 2012 when I did my PhD in Liverpool, UK. And since then, I'm still doing this, mainly research. I also have a product called, or a website, ICSrank.com. It's a search engine for OT devices. I'm also the founder of ICS Arabia Podcast, where I interview OT professional people like Aaron, hopefully will be my guest one day.
Of course.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you got started in this, and I always love this. We all have these different ways that we get into this space. So I came from an IT and technology background and got thrown into OT because I was working in power plants and critical infrastructure. So I came at it from that lens. I didn't, I had an electrical engineering background, right? So I didn't really come at it from a collegiate or book side of things or research side. So I always love the perspective of how you come into it in these different ways. And it just goes to show we talked about it before we started recording. We can always learn from each other. We all have different perspectives and different experiences and different ways that we got into this. And all of those values and experiences are so valuable to the greater community and being able to learn from each other. Because again, you're going to have experienced and seen things that I haven't, and vice versa. And if we can sit down and put our egos aside, and I don't have a PhD, I don't have any of those things, but I know that I can provide value because of my experiences, and you have a lot of experiences that you can provide value to. So that's what I love about this community and this space. Cybersecurity seems to be a unique place that people, practitioners and experts from different backgrounds are willing to put their differences aside and really work towards the goals of improving the cyber posture of whatever thing they're trying to protect.
Sure, man. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with you. We all learn from each other. We share knowledge together. And I like the community. Really, I love it. It's very different than the other cybersecurity communities. So,
yeah. So what made you start with the ICSrank? So I love the idea. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the listeners may or may not know what it is. So why don't you dive into a little bit about what that is and what the purpose and kind of goal of why you started it and what it's turned into?
Okay. So ICSrank idea, but it goes back to my research, my study during my PhD. It was deeper than that during the research. The idea was to develop a framework to assess the OT devices on the internet.
Sure.
I remember in 2014, I looked at Shodan. I think it just came out, maybe. And I saw PLCs and SCADA and HMI, you name it. And I said, wow, that's interesting. So I had a question, how to rank those devices. I mean, how secure are they? How to assess them? So I developed a methodology like using open source intelligence data. So the more data about a device, maybe it could show you the posture or the security or the criticality of this device, and thus the risk of this device that can have. So time goes on, and then I finished the framework, my study. Then I said, why don't I make it real? So I developed a tool, a simple tool. Now it's still small. It's still not has all the functions that I mentioned in my research.
Yeah.
But the idea of it was to find devices like HMI, SCADA, whatever, using major search engines like Shodan, Censys, ZoomEye, and other search engines, of course, that I could have my hand on. So the idea or the motivation was to make it easier for asset owners to filter out devices by their vendor names and product names, because if many asset owners, they don't know how to find the ICS devices, and they don't know if they are exposed or not. So that was the idea. I know Shodan has done this very well, but still Shodan don't give you the categories listed like I do in my tool. And the tool is still small. The next version will be out maybe this month. It will have more features, more capabilities, of course. So that's the idea.
So first, that's amazing, and you're so right. Like, these asset owners, they have so many devices that they don't exactly always even know which versions they have, and sometimes just narrowing it down to Rockwell or GE or Schneider or Yokogawa or whatever the thing is really helps them to say. Because you look at Shodan, it's just, or a lot of these alerts that come out, and it's just like all of these things. The sky's falling. I don't even know where to start. But if I can at least narrow that down just a little bit, hey, I only have Rockwell, or I only have, Emerson Delta V, or whatever that thing is. If I can start narrowing those things down, and we also know that site to site, even within the same company, they're going to have different vendors and hardware that's in their space. So understanding those risks and what the real risk, and understanding the vulnerabilities in those spaces helps them to make decisions on how do I configure things? Do I need to update things? Like, all that type of stuff is invaluable to them, because they have just so much it can be overwhelming to look at all the things that I have to do in an environment. Yeah.
The idea of ICSrank in my research was to cover all the information about the device, like you said, CVEs, web interfaces if they exist, default credentials, any news about the device. So once you filter a device, then it will give you everything available on the internet about this device, whether there are exploits, whether there are, you name it, anything that could jeopardize the device. But still, the current one is simpler than the research. It's because it's still one-man job. I'm still doing it alone. That's why it's slow. And as you know, I'm a family guy, so it's taking time.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. But ultimately, what I love about that story is all it takes is an idea, and we all have. I believe that everybody has those ideas and has great things to offer and value to bring to the organization that they're in, the larger community, and ultimately, I know it kind of sounds woo woo, but even the world, right? As we can make a change, even a small pebble thrown into a big lake makes a ripple. And that ripple can start out small, but if you throw enough small ones in and you time them in the right place, those ripples can get really big, and they literally go across the ocean. And it just goes to show that we can make an impact, right? And little things make a difference. So yes, you're a small thing, and it started out with an idea in your head, but how many people have that idea in their head and don't actually take that action and take it and make it to be something? Like, you could have stopped at your research and said, oh, that's a cool idea, and put it on a shelf, and it could have been a book on a shelf in the back, and nobody but you ever got the value of it, right? But instead, you took it that next level, and that's where I challenge people. So I get a lot of folks that are reaching out, how do I get into the industry? How do I, I don't have experience. I didn't come from, that background. I came from IT, or I came from the military, or I came from whatever. That doesn't mean that they don't have value to bring. So think about those types of things. Come up with an idea and make something, right? With ChatGPT and AI and all these things, the ability to take your ideas and turn them into reality are that much easier, right? It doesn't make it easy. It just means some of those barriers, you don't have to be a perfect coder to be able to build a website to do certain things or build a database. Like, there's so many tools out there that can help us and do it so quickly and fast.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I was lucky also that AI came along, so it did help me with and developing the website. And I mean, the current version is coming, and it has more features with the help of AI, of course, because I don't have to search now those websites or read a lot of documents. It just give it the idea, and it will show you the code. You just have to be familiar a little bit with the programming. But I have a computer science background, so it wasn't an issue.
So what's one of the most interesting things, if you could think of, that you found in this process of building this ICSrank? And maybe it's one of the vulnerabilities or one of the assets or something that you found along the way that was interesting or scary or funny or I'm sure something comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, because I've been using and digging Shodan and Google, of course, since 2012 or 14. I discovered many things. Now it's not as it's used to. Now there are less devices that are exposed when I started.
Sure.
When I started, I used to find Windows XPs that's running ICS. I took snapshots of those devices just for memory.
Right.
I found default credentials. Many of them I managed to enter to. I'm exposing now myself. So.
Sure.
I also managed to find devices that shows who are the asset owners.
Right.
That gives hints because they have some domains, and you could tell this is water utility.
Sure.
I was amazed, and I wrote an article about that because I also write articles and blogs.
Sure.
So I wrote an article, and that article went boom because it's not easy to attribute devices to who's the owner,
right?
But because it always show you the ISPs that those devices are running. So, but those devices, they had clues that who was the owner,
right?
And like I told you,
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. And again, I get this a lot. Many times it comes from the smaller wastewater or, water utilities or even small, manufacturing or whatever. And these owners or these plant managers are like, why would somebody want to come after me? We're a small paper mill or we're a small water utility. And you just hit the nail on the head, right? Is a lot of times it's just because they found it. It's because it showed up on Shodan or they ran across something or somehow it came in their sphere and they're just attacking it because it's there. They're attacking it because they can. They don't necessarily even know what it is or what it does. It's opportunity. It's there. It's available. I'm going to see what I can do with it. And then sometimes they get lucky and it happens to be at a wastewater or water utility or, something like that. And they're like, oh, okay, I hit a jackpot here because I'm in something that's really valuable instead of, a vending machine that's, or the break room ice machine, right? You just never know what the device is because the PLC could be controlling a turbine or it could be controlling, an ice machine in a break room. And you really have no idea just by a PLC. You can't tell the difference between them unless they actually say, turbine at, power plant A. And sometimes they do.
Exactly. Yeah. I also saw a joke, from Twitter when I posted that article. I don't know, maybe he was an asset owner. He said, oh man, you put this tool, ICSrank, now I cannot play hide and seek. Because he was trying, he thought that he was hidden, but he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. Like the ignorance is not security, right? Obscurity by security, that whole mindset of it is long gone because again, with tools on the flip side, bad actors are able to use these same tools, AI, et cetera, that we're talking about. Shodan, they can be used for good or they could be, the hammer is not good or bad. Just like a gun isn't good or bad, a knife isn't good or bad. Any of those, they're just inanimate objects. It's what I do with it. I can build a house or I can hit somebody over the head with it, right? Either those are two different outcomes with the same tool. It's not the tool's fault. It's what I do with it. Same thing with Shodan. Shodan in and of itself is not bad, but used in the wrong way, it can be used for malicious activities.
Yeah. I also had this criticism sometimes from some people. They say, why you write about these exposing devices? Why you develop these tools? And sometimes, you go and ask yourself, do I really want to share this knowledge? But you're right. I mean, in cybersecurity, you have to share this kind of knowledge because whether you share it or not, the attackers are doing it. So, and the number of devices now has decreased, which means that asset owners know about this. So this kind of knowledge is good. I mean, this kind of information is good.
Absolutely. Ignorance is not going to help you. Not knowing that you're exposed does not make you more secure than knowing you're exposed and actually doing something about it. Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you spend a lot of time. So obviously ICSrank and this, but you also spend a lot of time doing, OT hunt and researching into those findings. So how do those things align, and how do you kind of dive into finding those vulnerabilities in these OT spaces and really going after that type of stuff?
Yeah, what I do, my job, I play different roles in OT security.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm the researcher, sometimes I'm the coder, sometimes I'm
sure
a podcaster, whatever.
Yeah.
But when I have a researcher hat, I just go and find the new filters that Shodan hasn't covered or nobody has covered, and I managed to do that by reading the manuals of famous, vendors. Mm-hmm. Sometimes by crafting keywords from each vendor and test them out, you eventually end up finding a device. And sometimes it's not classified as ICS in Shodan.
Sure.
So when I find a finding, I sometimes ask myself whether I want to include it in ICSrank only or just share it and write about it.
Sure.
So I decided to do both. If I have the time.
Yeah.
So my writing, if I write, I go more details. I just do the style that I did in my research during study. So right. I show how I found this device, what are the filters, and if there are any CVEs related to this one,
right.
What's the impact, and etc. Just to make the article valuable for in a simple language for even for the asset owners to understand.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is the relation between my blog and my tool.
Right.
They complement each other.
Sure. Well, and that's powerful. And again, you hit something there. I want to double click on, and that's, it's really easy in the cyber world. I talk with a lot of folks that are super intelligent. They're super capable. But it doesn't matter how smart you are or I am if we can't make the asset owner understand, right? If we talk over their head or we talk down to them, it's not going to help them improve their cyber posture. So we have to take these really complex, because not everybody has a computer science engineering background, or even electrical engineering background, or whatever their background is. But we have to make it where anybody can take that information and, okay, so what? What do I do with this? Like, what? All of this stuff is awesome. I'm glad that all that's there. At the end of the day, what I really need to know is, okay, I have this device. Yes, it is applicable to my device. What can I do about it? Is there a CVE? Can I patch it? Can I turn off a notification? Can I monitor? Like, what is the mitigation that I can do for this risk in my environment if I have that risk, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I write various articles for various search engines sometimes. Sometimes sure. I show them how to find these devices in Shodan, sometimes in ZoomEye. I know it's Chinese, and sometimes it's using Censys. Yep. Not just the operator. Sometimes I show them if there are issues with the web interfaces, if they're exposed for this product, and if there are default credentials, I try my best to show it. And also, if there are open for other ports, like could also jeopardize the device, like Telnet or FTP.
Sure.
Because some of them have Telnet or many of them have it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, until now.
Telnet and default credentials and, HTTP, not HTTPS, insecure protocols. Like, it's just like a laundry list of all the vulnerabilities or potential vulnerabilities in these spaces. And that's the other piece in this world that we live in OT. We can't just go replace it. In IT, you would never put a Windows XP machine on the enterprise network, right? They just kick it off. They give you a new laptop. Here, take a brand new Windows 11 or a MacBook or whatever it is, but they would never allow a Windows XP machine in their environment. But we know, and you said it earlier, sometimes Windows XP is running a critical system in production. Right. Not sometimes, many times a Windows XP machine is running in these spaces, and you can't just rip it out. And I've talked about this multiple times, but we have to know that. And it doesn't mean that it can't be secure. It just means I have to know those vulnerabilities and how do I protect against those things, right? Not everything is it has perfect security, and it doesn't even matter if Windows 11, if I've patched it 100%, there could be a 0 day that nobody knows about. And there's a vulnerability on my Windows 11 machine. So yes, Windows XP or Vista and a lot of those different older operating systems have a laundry list of vulnerabilities that are known. I guess the argument can say, Sun Tzu, Art of War, use your weaknesses as strengths, as weaknesses. I know the vulnerabilities of Windows XP. There's a boatload of them, and I can mitigate against them. Yeah, I may not be able to patch for them, but I can isolate. I can make sure it's not on the internet. I can put, air gaps in between things. I can monitor those devices for those vulnerabilities. Hey, I know it has a telnet. I know it has this. I know it has that. I can't disable it. So let's monitor it. I only want to allow telnet from this one IP to this thing. Nothing else should be using telnet on this network. And if it is, boom, I want to notify on those things. Like those are things that we can do that when we can't just replace a Windows XP machine or patch it because there's not a patch to fix the vulnerability, right?
Exactly. Totally agree. I mean, the defense of depth, like you mentioned,
right.
Walking around the device is a way to protect these devices and zooming and segmenting the networks and not exposing it to the internet, of course, and which is still happening.
It's amazing how not too long ago we were putting these devices, I think many times even by accident, we were putting these devices directly on the internet, right? Directly available for access. And these are devices that are controlling physical processes, sometimes in really important environments like power plants. And if, you could actually kill someone or spin a turbine or break, damage equipment at least. And we had no idea that we were doing these things, or the people that were doing them, they weren't doing it maliciously. They were just trying to get their job done. Like ultimately, every time I've come across a problem or any of these things, it almost never has it been a malicious act. It's always been, well, we were trying to get our job done. It was 3:00 in the morning on a Friday and we had to get this done. The plant was down. We had to get it back up and running. It was critical. So we did what we could. We didn't realize that we also connected it to the internet when we did this. We were just trying to make it work.
Yeah. Sad. That's sad.
But it happens a lot. And part of this is because we don't always have a computer engineer or a cybersecurity person at the plants making these decisions, right? These are very capable people. And you mentioned it before, you wear multiple hats. You've got your journalism hat and you've got your ICSrank hat and you've got your researcher hat and you've got your practitioner hat. We're all wearing multiple hats. You go into these OT spaces and these people they're not just a cybersecurity person in OT that's sitting on the corner just doing OT cybersecurity stuff. They're running the plant. They're going out and they've got a hard hat and steel toe boots and they're in the plant and they're engaging with the equipment. They're physically running stuff and they're turning valves and they're doing all of this stuff. And also they have to also be the person that's responsible for that OT cybersecurity stuff. It may not be their experience. They may just be the most technically capable person at the site. And somebody said, you're it. But it's a priority of time. It's also a lack of knowledge just because they haven't experienced it or had that background. They haven't been able to devote time to do it. It's not they're not capable. It's that just they haven't spent that much time. Like I've never done, vulnerability research. You would not. Could I do it? I'm sure I've done a lot of stuff that's similar, but that's never been something I've done. So you wouldn't want me doing those things. I'd rather come to you and say, hey, why don't you research this thing for me? Because I'm not going to do it as well as you. Maybe I want to learn from you, but you don't want me doing that by myself because that's just not my experience and my specialty. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and you don't blame them sometimes because they don't have the resources. I mean, they have to get the job done. So who to blame and maybe how do you educate them to whether to outsource this or train the guys in house? Well, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, if you cannot afford it, because I heard once in one of your podcasts, the podcasts are for the asset owners who cannot afford to just come and tune in to Aaron and ICS Arabia and listen and learn.
Correct.
For free.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%. And that's why I do this. I'm sure that's why you do it as well. Is, obviously it helps me and my brand and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately the reason I do this is a lot of work. Like this comes out of my pocket. Like I pay for this editing, I pay for the software, I pay for the like this is time out of my day that I'm not doing other things. And it's not free. And I do this because I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference, and I want people to learn. And it's a way that I learn. So I do this as much for me. So I'm constantly growing and learning from awesome people like you. But also we're getting to share that with the greater community that we can come back and look and listen to this and watch it and learn for themselves. Like, hey, how can I use ICSrank in my space, in my environment to better understand the vulnerabilities that I have in my environment so that I can better protect them? So that if one person listens to this podcast, goes to your website, finds one device that was vulnerable that they didn't know was vulnerable, and makes a change to their architecture to make their environment more secure, then this podcast was worth the time that you and I dedicated, in my opinion, because one person made a difference in one device, and that has it's that small pebble in the big pond. It makes a ripple all the way across it, even though it seems insignificant at the surface level. It could have had a big impact that we don't even know about, which is awesome. And I love doing this. And so I get so passionate, and I'm smiling about it. I love doing these episodes and just want to continue doing them.
I feel it. Yeah. Never underestimate what you do. I mean,
right.
Like you said, even one person is enough.
100%. 100%. And your environment and your community and your peers and your company, but also in a bigger perspective, we're literally across the world from each other. You know, I'm in, the US and Texas, and you're in a different climate, a different time zone, like in a different continent, like all of the things, yet we're able to have this conversation and talk about things that we have a lot in common. Like, I'm a father, I have kids, I do this because I want a future where my kids can grow up and they can, depend on power and water and have clean water and all those things. Ultimately, I want that for all of my listeners, right? I want everybody to have that ability to protect their environment and make sure that they can run, water systems and run power plants and all those kind of things without it getting turned off or, having the vulnerabilities because they didn't have the resources to hire, somebody to do it. That doesn't mean you can't make a difference, right?
Of course. I mean, this is a social responsibility. I mean, what we're doing now, we want to protect the critical infrastructure, which is important for everybody. And this is like very, very critical. I've been asked a lot during, I was in television, I was in radio also. They asked me, what's the impact? What if something goes wrong? I always ask them back, can you afford not to have electricity?
Right.
Or like you said, water. They said, no, it says, this is what we're doing. This is so much serious, it's serious work. It's very critical. And I think asset owners should look at it this way, that cybersecurity isn't a luxury or an expense. It's your responsibility to protect it. As long as you have it, you have to learn how to protect anything. If you drive a car or ride or go on a plane, they teach you safety and what to do, what not to do. This should be also the mentality or the mindset of asset owners. Yeah, you have an asset, so how are you gonna protect it? As simple 100%. As that.
Yeah, I believe it's the asset owner's obligation to make sure that it's safe, reliable, and effective. And cyber has become part of that conversation. It's one of the risks to the business. It's not just cybersecurity for cybersecurity's sake. It is literally, it is a risk to the business process and understanding the safe, reliable, and effective running of an environment, whether it's a manufacturing facility, but especially in critical infrastructure where people's lives depend on it. Like, if you lose electricity, you lose water, people can die from that, right? Directly, indirectly, having no running water, you can get sick, having no electricity in hospitals. And, that's a big impact. And, backup power only lasts so long. And, it's a big deal. And that's why, OT, I've done IT and OT. I do both of those conversations. I spend most of my time focused in OT, and that's mainly the reason. I'm super passionate about it because, in IT, your email server goes down or your web server goes down and you can't sell a widget. Yes, it's going to hurt you financially, but people's lives are not directly impacted. And when I say that, I don't mean they're not impacted. Obviously, if you lose your job, if you can't buy food, there's an obvious impact, but it's a different impact than, people are directly killed or lives are lost because there's no electricity, there's no running water. I can't do surgeries. There's all these different direct, very one level of separation with OT cybersecurity that is very impactful and very huge and is a big risk to the world, to your point, like to the global people on this planet. We're all humans. Like, we look different. We have a different background and experience. We have different thoughts and opinions. But again, I'm a father. I have kids. I have a wife. I have a mother. I have a sister. Like, I'm a human. I'm on this planet and I want to help other humans to be safe. And I think if I don't want to sound Pollyanna or whatever or anything, but it's really just if we can weed back all the other stuff that you and I may not agree on or understand or align on, if we can focus on the things that we do, it's easy to have a conversation like this and not get into the weeds of the other things, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm also thankful to discover OT security or ICS security.
Yep.
Because I didn't know it. I was an IT guy since the 90s, maybe
Yep.
like you.
Yep.
We share the same age, maybe. And in 2012, when I visited this university in Liverpool, I asked to do a PhD. Then the supervisor told me, go read this. He gave me some papers.
Okay.
And I look at the papers. It says SCADA security back then. So what's SCADA security? So I took it home and I read it, and it was something I fell in love. I couldn't understand most of it, but I loved it. So I said, okay, I'm in. I told him I'm in. So it took me maybe 1 year or more just to learn the OT stuff, because
Sure.
I'm not an engineer. So I had to read, the learning curve was a bit high,
Yeah.
I cannot proceed in cybersecurity if I don't understand the theory
Right.
of OT. So that's what I did, theoretical. But later on, back at the end of the study, I started to visit, factories and stuff like that to confirm my studies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful I discovered it, and since 2012, I'm here, and I feel I'm happy, with the community like you guys, and
Yeah, it's different, and again, very similar background in that I came from IT, and it was about 2010, I think, when I really kind of transitioned. I'd spent time in OT, but it wasn't called OT. When I started in OT, it wasn't called OT. It was, cybersecurity or compliance or whatever, just technology. And I just happened to be the guy that understood the networking and the technology side of things. And they said, hey, we need help over there. Go do it over there. So I'm just showing up at power plants like, okay, what do I do here?
Yeah, exactly.
But I've had an awesome, fun time doing it and learned so much from doing that and working outages and power plants and doing control system upgrades and segmentations and all the things and manufacturing facilities. And, over my career, I've been fortunate to, go from everything from a nuclear power plant to solar and wind, critical manufacturing, auto manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, like you name it. I've kind of seen a little bit of it all. And it's been really awesome to see. At the end of the day, it's just OT. It's just a PLC. It's just doing the same thing. Like, it's sending a signal and says somebody wants it to do something. It has a threshold. And if it sees this, then it does this action. It just happens. Is it moving an arm? Is it, adding fuel to a turbine? Is it spinning things differently? Like, it's just the same process in a different business, right? It's really no different. OT is OT. Now, granted, I need to understand the business side of it too, but as far as just the technology side of OT, it doesn't really matter what vertical you're in. They're very, very, very similar.
Totally agree. I noticed that OT is very simple. They use a similar language,
right?
All kind of OTs industries, because I've spoken in my podcast to medical industries.
Sure.
You name it, oil, gas, water. They always think the same. I think the OT is very simple, simpler than IT.
Sure.
It's not as complicated. It's not as diverse. So even I know there are many vendors, but they still speak the same language, and it made OT cybersecurity simple. And like you said, the routine, it affected our mentality. We IT people. I don't know, somehow. So totally agree.
So what do you see coming in, like the future trends of things? Obviously OT is I agree. It's simpler. It's different. And part of the reason that those different vendors, they speak the same language is because they're going to be intermingled, right? That you've got vendor A and vendor B and vendor C all in the same space, doing different things on different assets, but they all have to be able to talk together because it's one ultimate process. It's one planner. It's one manufacturing facility, and they have to work together because at the end of the day, they're doing this process and the other one does this next step, but they still have to send, okay, I'm done. It's your turn now, right? It could be as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've read a lot that those vendors, they want to unify the communication, for example, by developing OPC and
sure,
and that and I think there is a setup called Neom. I can't remember the name, but the idea behind it was to make it standardized. You know, like a language, uniform language between the OT. But I'm not sure how far it went. So. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, even the protocols are different, but they meet in one.
Sure.
They meet somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the business world, you would look at that like as an integration, whether it be an API call or something like that, right? It's a way that I can get data from, say, SAP into my ERP system, or data from my network switches into Splunk. Like we use syslog, and there's a lot of ways that we send that data, SNMP, et cetera, on the cyber side. We need to do that in the OT space, which is why. The other piece to that in the OT side is we care more about availability and speed than we do. That's why we don't normally encrypt our protocols at that space. I'd rather protect the whole network and not let you see the network traffic at all than encrypt the network and add complexity and overhead to that environment, because that impacts the ability for it to do what it's supposed to do. Like, again, I usually go to the extreme to tell my story, but when I'm in a nuclear power plant, I care more about that they could control that reaction than I do anything else. That's the only thing I care about, right? I want to make sure that reaction is kept in control. And it's the same thing I always say when we talk about patching. I said, okay, you're on a 747, you're in the air, and it's the control system in the plane needs a patch update. Do you want them to patch it while you're at 30,000 feet? Or do you want to wait till they land and do it in maintenance mode? I mean, for me, I want them to land. I don't want them to do it while I'm in the air. Not if I'm in the plane or my loved ones, right? I'd rather them wait. And that's why we don't patch the same way in OT that we do in IT. Because you patch in IT and your laptop reboots and you're in the middle of a Zoom call. Nobody dies, right? It's frustrating. It's annoying, but nobody dies. You reboot your laptop and you're all good. And worst case scenario, it crashes your laptop. They send you a new laptop. You're up and running. You don't lose data. All your data is in the cloud anyways. That happens in an OT space. People could literally die. Right. Yeah. We've seen planes that have crashed here recently. The helicopter that hit in the United States, they say that had a control system issue that they couldn't control it. Like, there's all sorts of little things like that. And I don't think it was a cyber issue whatsoever. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying little things like that can impact and actually cause direct human life loss. And damage to physical equipment and all sorts of bad things. It's a different impact and a different reason why we do things differently in OT, right?
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree. I mean, patching, I think, is not the top priority sometimes, for OT people, because, or for OT.
Sure.
Because, like you said, the operation and the business must keep going,
Yeah.
And even... I know an organization here in Kuwait, when they want to apply a patch, they do it in they have a lab, like a demo,
yep.
They test it there sometimes.
Sure.
And maybe when the right time comes, maybe they apply it if it succeeds in the
sure.
in the lab. So
that's a great method, right? That's a great way you should do it. Anyways, right? I've built labs for these environments, critical infrastructure, and that's exactly the reason. I'm going to test it in my lab before I test it in production. And even when I do it, test it in production, I'm going to test it on one system, and then I'm going to wait till that one's done, and then I'll test it on the second system, and then the third. Like, I'm not in IT, I would just push it to everybody, and in OT, I'm going to be like, I'll do it on one, and I'm going to wait a day, and then I'll do it on the next one maybe tomorrow, and it may take me a week to roll it all out, but I know that I could continue running the plant in that time. Worst case scenario, I lost one system. I've got 2 or 3 backups, so I'm good.
Yeah. Even at IT, sometimes, the patching could lead to problems. Like,
yes.
You remember the CrowdStrike,
Oh, yeah.
3 months ago, 4 months
yep.
ago. It was
yeah.
like domino effect, like airports and flights stopped and
yep.
banks stopped.
All around the world.
Yeah, it's just from one single update,
Yep, 100%. So what do you see? So obviously I'm in the States. I do, some international with UK and some places, but from what do you see across, other countries and other, how are they approaching OT, and are you seeing as big of a trend? Obviously US is really big, where we constantly are getting nation state attackers coming after us, et cetera. UK, you're seeing a big effort, Germany, et cetera. What are you seeing internationally with the OT response and asset owners? Really, are they seeing the value? Are they taking heed? Are they making changes? Like what are you seeing in international space?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about my country and the Gulf region where I belong.
Yep.
Well, I mean, the region, it was hit by attacks, as you remember the Triton, the Crisis, Triton attack. It was in Saudi Arabia, so. Since the Shannon, I think the Shannon in Aramco.
Yeah.
So I mean, the OT security now is getting better in the region because they witnessed those attacks. They know that it could reach them, not just the US and the West.
Sure.
Now there are many conferences. The government of Saudi, for example, they are restricting all industries to follow practices like best practices, and they developed their own standards, and they fine them if they don't do it, and it's like a rule. So I'm seeing the region is getting better now. I know there are some small entities that still not catching up. Most of those who are securing their network or the OT are the oil people, most of them, because they have the money. But I've seen food industries here in Kuwait and simple factories, they still don't know what's going on. Even they don't know the term OT security.
Right.
So but anyway, it's getting better for the major.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's really no different here in the States or UK or et cetera, right? It's the bigger companies that have the money that are spending the most time and effort, and it's the smaller organizations that don't have the money that they have to prioritize where they're spending their money and their efforts and their people. So it's a common across geographies and borders. It seems to be a similar problem that we're still experiencing. That regulation has helped with, grants and funding has helped with, but it's an uphill battle for a while. That, again, I don't want to discourage anyone, but it still means, it doesn't mean you can't do nothing, right? Even with a small budget, limited budget, one person can make a difference, right? You look at tools like ICSrank, like he's talking about, like it's there. Look at that. Like take some action. Like know where your vulnerabilities are and what can you do about those things. A lot of times it doesn't mean you have to have a staff. It doesn't mean you've got to go buy expensive tools. A lot of things that you can just disable Telnet or, turn off Telnet on your firewall. Make sure you're not on the internet. Like little things like that make a big difference.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a process. It's small steps, step by step. Read more, follow the community, watch what podcast. It's not rocket science, really.
Yeah.
It's especially if he's an IT guy, it's simple for him to help in this direction. If they have IT people, of course.
Correct.
They could help in these without interfering, of course, with the OT process.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So what in the next, we've talked about a lot of things. So in the next 5 to 10 years, what's one thing coming up over the horizon you see maybe that's concerning and one thing that's exciting?
I think the coming 10 years will witness more AI, of course. We see this, and more integration with the cloud.
Yep.
I don't know whether this is good or not, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the big vendors like Siemens, as those big companies, they are going to the cloud. They're pushing it.
Yeah.
So I think the asset owners maybe will have to catch up one day with them.
Sure.
It depends. So this means more integration with the internet, more opening, more. So this could increase the risk, of course, but
Sure.
It depends. It depends how they implement it. So following the technology is not good. It's not black and white. It's not bad. Ugly. It depends how you use it, how you implement it, how you design it, how you segment the network, whatever.
Sure.
So I'm seeing maybe AI. I'm seeing some research. They're using AI to help in dissecting the for detection. In the network, and also they making AI understand more about the processes, which is what I've seen lately in some research, which could help the human, because instead of reading all that or looking for many alerts, the AI can speed this up for you. So this is what they call digital transformation, which is so the bad things, maybe I'm sure the attackers, I'm sure they're coming better now, because AI, of course, it helps them to understand the processes better. So if you don't catch up with the bad guys or the attackers, maybe this is bad news for the OT community. So it has to be. You have to do your homework and educate yourself.
Awesome. So this is the call to action time. So how can people find out about, obviously we'll put all the show notes, but tell us about your podcast. Obviously you already mentioned about ICSrank. How can people find out more information on that and use it in their workplace and learn more? Just kind of give us all the things that people can go to find you and all the things about you guys.
I mean, I'm active in LinkedIn. You just type Alhasawi and you will find me. I'm also active in my podcast, ICS Arabia. I interview people. Well, it's called Arabia because I'm trying to provide Arabic content for the region. But I also interview people from around the world. No problem. ICS Arabia. You can find me on YouTube. Also, my tool ICSrank is free to use. Even the next version will be free, but there will be some maybe paid things, but it's mostly free. And I will update it, of course, with new vendors, with new products every time I get my hands on new findings. That's it.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate it. It was an awesome conversation. Again, I love the fact that you and I are on and literally different worlds across the world, right? And we're able to we're still fighting the same problems and issues in our spaces, again, from different perspectives and different backgrounds. But we've seen a lot of the same issues and have a lot of the same struggles and also doing a lot of the same things to try to fight for the good, right? And to help in these spaces. So thank you very, very much for your time. Very much hope I get to shake your hand and have a coffee or something with you sometime soon at a conference or at a speaking opportunity or something like that in the future. Thank you very much for your time and joining me today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm really happy to see you and meet you on the camera. You're doing a very good job. Great job, really, in the podcast. Good luck with it.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on Protect It All, where we explore the crossroads of IT and OT cybersecurity. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to stay ahead in this ever-evolving field. Until next time.